When we yell at our kids, your amygdala, your brain's alarm system, it's hijacking your prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of your brain. So you're literally operating from your primitive brain. And here's what's incredible. In just 8 weeks, we're seeing parents build new neural pathways every time they chose to pause instead of react. Every time they chose to use a tool instead of yell, they were literally rewiring their brain. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Today I have something absolutely extraordinary to share with you. My heart's racing. My face almost hurts. My cheeks almost hurt because I've been smiling so much. I've been so surprised by what we've been finding. I've never been more excited to record an episode. So are you ready? Today's episode is titled Proven Results and the 8-Week Parenting Pivot Data Study. And let me tell you why. So over the past several months, I have been analyzing all of the data from our CMP study that we conducted in 2024 with the help of some really smart individuals to assist me to make sense of all the data. We followed parents who were going through our new program, the 8-Week Parenting Pivot in 2024. We committed the whole year to measure, grow, study, track that. I wanted to see what the results were because I had been teaching Connect Method Parenting for a while. I'm trying to think. I think I started in 2018, actually really actively participating in or teaching it rather publicly. And over that time period up to 2023 is when we started creating Pivot. I had been teaching everything I possibly could. It was like fire hose mode. I just wanted to teach everybody all of the things that I had learned. And I started getting feedback that it was a lot, that it was overwhelming people, that they weren't able to assimilate it all. And I was like, okay, that's not working. I want this to be so accessible, so easy, so doable. And I want the results to be fast in the shortest period of time. So in 2023, I started looking through all of the content that I loved to teach to parents, the stuff that really resonated, the stuff that I felt was very fundamental and important. And I began to condense it down into what would become the 8-Week Parenting Pivot. Because I was advised over and over again to get to the shortest period of time for the greatest result. So 8 weeks was the shortest period of time that I could fathom being able to condense everything down into. And I went to work to do that. And lots of people revised it. We did some testing. And eventually we were ready to launch the 8-Week Parenting Pivot in 2024. And the commitment was we're going to spend an entire year having people come in and conduct a comprehensive study of some of the participants, not all of them, not everybody participated in the study, but participants who were able to come in and give us the feedback and let us track their results. And we're okay with that. And let us do interviews and filled out surveys and all sorts of stuff so that we could see what the results really were. And it was really surprising what we found. And before I share these numbers, I want to tell you a few things because this isn't just about the pivot. It's not just about the programs I teach. What I was out to do was to prove that parenting can be transformed fast. That patterns that we've inherited don't have to be patterns that we pass on. That conscious parenting works. That you can go from yelling and feeling frustrated and having negative thoughts about your kids to deep connection and compassion. That change is not only possible, but that it's measurable. And I get emotional thinking about this because this study, it's such a win. It's a win for every parent who's ever felt like a failure, which was me. I felt like such a failure when my kids were little and I didn't know what to do and I didn't know how to turn things around. It's for every parent who's gone to bed with guilt because they didn't like how they showed up and they're not sure what to do to make tomorrow different. It's for every parent who has wondered if they're messing their kids up and if they're cut out for parenting. Because this data proves that transformation is real, that it's attainable, and that we can have really good shifts in a fairly short period of time. So let me talk about how we ran the study, because I am so excited to present it to you, this 8-week parenting pivot data study. And again, it included us studying 237 participants over the course of 2024. participating in different 8-week parenting pivot cohorts. So let me talk about how we conducted the study. Parents provided baseline assessments at what things were like at the beginning of the study. They rated themselves on key parenting metrics on a scale of 1 to 10. Then they completed that same assessment for 8 weeks, and then they completed it again after the 8 weeks. And we tracked behavioral changes and transformational patterns all along the way and measured their satisfaction and the impact it was having on their life. This study reports median improvements across all participants. So it's giving us the most truthful picture of typical results. So let me talk about the results because it's mind-blowing. First, let me go through some overall transformational metrics that we found. So overall average improvement was 133%. So crazy, 133%. And what was also just mind-blowing is that every single participant reported meaningful positive change in some way, shape, or form. And at the end of the 8-week parenting pivot, we had them rate the program on 5 stars and then down to 0. And we got a 4.8 rating because of course there's things we can improve. And I appreciated the honest feedback. It made each round of the pivot in 2024 better as we became more and more aware of things we could improve. But 4.8, I'm pretty darn happy with that. So average overall improvement was 133%. We had 100% success rate. They said that they felt successful. Every single participant. I can't even believe that. It might blows my mind that they reported some type of meaningful positive change. Everybody who participated and a 4.8 star rating of the program. So let me talk about specific area improvements that were measured and tracked and calculated, I guess you could say. Let's start first with emotional regulation and response. So when we asked parents what they would rate listening without yelling, and this was on a scale of 1 to 10. So the average before was 3.2. And by the end of the 8 weeks, it was 6.8 on average. So that's 113% improvement. And then handling challenges calmly went from 3.5 to 7.3. So that's 109% improvement. And thought control, meaning they were able to be aware of their thoughts, maybe change their thoughts, think more powerful thoughts, went from 2.3 to 7.0, which is a 204% improvement, which is so fantastic because really it's who we're being as a parent, what we're thinking, how we're feeling that sends messages to our kids through the mirror neurons. And so for us to be able to track that parents felt more in control and more empowered with their thinking and their emotional state was mind-blowing and so encouraging that was a 204% improvement. Yes, I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud of the parents that was what they felt, that they did the work to create that for themselves. Now, parenting confidence and clarity. So parenting confidence went from 3.8 to 7.6, which is 100% improvement, which is awesome. Knowing what to do when they were in sticky situations went from 2.8 to 8.6. So that's 207% improvement. And then thought awareness went from 2.5 to 8.3. So that's 232% improvement. And then relationship and connection was the last category that I want to call out right now. And it's connection level. So we asked them how they felt about their relationship with their kids. So that went from 4.8 to 8.4, which is a 75% improvement. And then kids' behavior, they rated how they felt their kids were doing on a scale of 1 to 10. And so it started with 4.2 and went to 7.1, which is a 69% improvement in 8 weeks. All of these are in 8 weeks. So most people think changing ingrained patterns has to take years. But parents who went through the pivot, who did the work every single day, every single week, they did it in 8 weeks. They changed these patterns in 8 weeks. They made significant improvements in 8 weeks. From mental chaos to mental clarity, that was the 232% improvement is what we got reported on that, which is fantastic, that thought awareness. And it turns out transformation doesn't necessarily require a ton of time, but what it does require, what I feel like the study is proving that it does require tools, framework, and support. When we get that, we don't have to it takes so much time. And this really hits home for me because it took me 3 to 5 years to see significant transformation in how I was parenting, which was really frustrating. And that's a very long time. And what I love is seeing, that's because I didn't have set tools. I didn't know. I was scrambling. I was trying to figure it out. I didn't know the tools. I didn't have a clear framework. I didn't have the support. And so what I love seeing is that when those tools, that framework, and that support are given to a parent, that massive results happen. Change happens. Transformation happens. Now let's talk about behavioral transformations. Get more specific here. 78% went from daily yelling to weekly or less. That's huge. 78%. 71% reported better cooperation from their kids, which is massive. Feeling like the kids are more open to listening. It's huge. 65% experienced more physical affection with their kids. 52% saw improved sibling relationships. And this was so funny. I thought this was really interesting. 43% specifically said that they heard best day ever comments from their kids, which is crazy and so fun. And something I didn't expect. And we didn't specifically ask, did you hear best day ever from your kids? It just was something that was mentioned by 43% of the people in their comments, which I thought was really cool. So here's another statistic that I thought was really fascinating that we gathered over the course of this study is why parents joined. 42% wanted their kids to listen without yelling. 28% wanted to yell less. 20% sought deeper connection, and 10% joined because they had a very challenging child that they were trying to figure out, which is really fun. If you follow one of those categories, that's awesome. If yours is something else, but that's cool too. It doesn't matter why they joined. I just thought that was really interesting why people joined. So let's talk about what these numbers really mean. Let me break this all down for you. The parents who came into this program feeling like they were failing, they doubled their parenting confidence. And the parents who didn't know what to do when their child melted down, they experienced a 207% improvement in knowing how to actually respond, which is awesome. But here's what really gets me. 232% in thought awareness. Do you know what that means? That means parents went from being hijacked by their triggers to being conscious, intentional, and present. So for me, that's not just a number. It is a number. It's exciting, but it's not just a number. That's generational trauma being healed. That's patterns stopping with us and not being moved on to the next generation. Now, let me give you a 60-second neuroscience lesson that will blow your mind. At least it blew my mind when I learned this back in the day. When we yell at our kids, your amygdala, your brain's alarm system, it's hijacking your prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of your brain. So you're literally operating from your primitive brain. And here's what's incredible. In just 8 weeks, we're seeing parents build new neural pathways. Every time they chose to pause instead of react, every time they chose to use a tool instead of yell, they were literally rewiring their brain. And what we found is by week 3, the pause was becoming easier. Week 5, it was more and more familiar and comfortable. And by week 8, that new neural pathway was getting stronger, in a lot of cases stronger than the old one. They were experiencing less and less of the desire to do the old way of parenting in the heat of the moment. They were able to pause and able to choose something different. So they had literally started to build a new brain highway that bypassed that old road to yelling. And that's 232% improvement in thought awareness. That's neuroplasticity in action. That's your brain proving that it can change at any age. Doesn't matter how old you are or how old your kids are. We can change the patterns. We can change how we show up, which starts to change everything. I want to share what participants said before and after, which I thought was fascinating. So here's the before the pivot. These are just a couple of the quotes that parents told us. They described themselves before the pivot as chaotic, overwhelmed, and exhausted. Another parent said, daily yelling and consistent battles. Someone else said, feeling like a failure as a parent. Another one, disconnection from my children. Another one, reactive parenting without tools. And finally, second guessing every decision. And then after the pivot, here's what they said. I'm feeling calm, confident, and connected. I feel like I have a clear path forward with tools. I feel hope and excitement for the future. I feel stronger family relationships. I feel more intentional and thoughtful in my parenting. I feel more peace and more understanding. I love their real words. I love sharing those before and after glimpses into what they were able to create. Now, let me share 3 specific takeaways that came from parents who did the pivot, which I thought were so well worded and so beautifully articulated. So one of the moms who did the pivot said before the pivot, life looked like chaos and disconnection. Now there's a clear path forward. I feel more confident in knowing how to interact with my kids, and I actually enjoy being with them. Another mom said, I went from daily yelling to maybe once a week. My teenager, who hasn't showed affection in years, gave me a kiss on the cheek. I cried. Home life is so much better. I love being more connected. And finally, a mom shared with me, CMP, which is our shortcut way of saying connect method parenting, has made such a difference in my life. I learned it's in my power to shift myself, let go, relinquish control, and focus on the present moment. So good. And I think those are a really good glimpse that represent the transformation that we saw in the 8 weeks, which is so humbling and so exciting and makes me want to have everyone who wants to be able to go through the pivot, because this is what I want for everyone. I feel really passionate about this. Next to my marriage and my own children, this is right up there in my life purposes. Okay, so let me tell you about one of the moms who came through. I'm going to call her Sarah. That's not her real name. But Sarah came in at week 1, rating herself 2.5 and handling challenges calmly. Week 2, she was doing great. She said, I'm implementing the tools. I'm feeling hopeful. Things are getting better. Then week 3 hit. And she had what she called like a massive backpedaling because her child had this tantrum in Target and she yelled and she lost her cool. So she posted something and said, I'm exactly where I started before the pivot. This isn't working. I'm broken. So for almost every parent that goes through the pivot, I've noticed, and this is parents who just work with me one-on-one or parents who have worked with me in other programs, that they have this escalation in capacity as they learn more. And then typically there's this moment or a couple of moments where they feel like they just revert back and they'll think that, everything that they've done, all the momentum they've created is lost, but that's not true. And here's what I said to Sarah. I said, you're not broken. You're breaking through. The fact that you noticed, you yelled, the fact that you felt it immediately, the fact that you repaired, the fact that you're on here posting about it to ask for help, that's not failure. That's awareness. That's progress. She was able to hear that, not beat herself up, and see the awareness as the growth. So week 4, she reported yelling twice, but repairing even faster. Week 5, once. By week 8, she rated herself as a 7.3 in being able to handle challenges calmly, which was awesome. Now, she ended up joining League so she could get more support. We call it CMP Mastery, is the program you go into, where you maintain access to pivot. And then you're also doing more deep dives with me on other topics like emotions and discipline and all sorts of stuff. We deep dive into lots of things, how to handle off-track behavior in different ways, just all sorts of stuff. We kind of go through what we go through in the pivot deeper and more thoroughly because we have that foundation now. So she ended up going into that and she kept gaining momentum. And she said at one point, this was fairly early on, that she had a 6-week streak where she hadn't yelled, which was so cool. And she said it's because they have knowledge, tools, and support. And I think the thing to call out here is that the path to becoming the parent you want to become isn't linear. It's not just uphill. Once we know better, we do better. We still have a nervous system. We still have stresses and other things that get in the way. So we're going to, do better. And then we're going to struggle. It's not week 1 struggle, week 8 success. It's messy. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's crying in your car after a Target meltdown and knowing that you are still on the path to transformation. And so what I loved seeing as I was going through the numbers, I was going through people's stories and their feedback, was seeing over and over again this non-linear path, yet progressive, consistent path of transformation. It was so good. And here's what we didn't expect to measure but couldn't ignore, that I heard from parent after parent. I heard them say, hey, this has affected my marriage. It's so much better. I'm sleeping better because I'm a lot calmer and less stressed. I'm using these tools with my mother-in-law and our relationship's improving. Or it's making a difference at work. My boss is noticing. My coworkers are noticing. I feel better at work. And one mom said, I came to fix my relationship with my kids, but the tools fix my relationship with myself. And that seems to be fixing everything else. And I love that. It's so good. The ripple effect was so consistent that I want to start tracking it better. I want to start tracking spousal relationship improvements, sleep quality improvements, work performance shifts, extended family dynamic shifts. We'll probably end up doing that down the road, but I would love to track that too. We didn't specifically track it, but we did get that feedback, which is really fun. And I had one parent say to me, which I thought was so cute. She's like, this is not just Connect Method parenting. This is Connect Method living, which I think is reflective of this ripple effect. Because when you change how you think, you don't just change one area of your life. If I teach you a more connective way to be with your kids, it's going to change how you are with your friends and your in-laws and your coworkers and your neighbor. So you don't just change one area of your life, you change how you exist in the world, because how you do anything is how you do everything. So once you change one part of you, your whole life will start changing. Now, here's what makes me sometimes sad when I think about a lot of the traditional parenting advice out there. It's mostly behavior modification or learning theory based. So we'll hear things like put them in timeout so they can learn that lesson, or use a sticker chart to motivate them today. It's treating our children like animals to be trained instead of humans to be understood. Or worse, it tells you as a parent to stay calm and don't yell, and just stay regulated and stop treating your kids like that, which is great. I mean, we want to stop yelling, we want to do better, but it doesn't tell you what to do when you have the anger bubbling up in your chest. Traditional parenting advice focuses on controlling the child, mostly. Like, get them to stop doing this thing, or stop reacting this way, or stop, hitting or throwing or biting or whatever it is. Doing their chores, we're focusing on controlling the child. But what I will say is very different with a developmentally based, attachment theory focused framework like Connect Method parenting is we start by connecting and understanding ourselves first, because we can't give what we don't have. We can't teach our kids to be regulated if we don't know how to do it. We can't teach calm if we don't know calm. So we don't teach you to manage your child's behavior. We teach you to manage your behavior and your mind. And when you start managing and changing your outlook, your point of view, your ability to regulate your nervous system, you start showing up different. And you know what's crazy and amazing is the better you get at showing up, and I teach you the tools that you can then use because you're showing up so much better, your child's behavior changes naturally, not through manipulation, but through connection, through compassionate alpha, through understanding emotions, and so many other things, but it starts with you first. Now, I'm going to give you one tool from Connect Method Parenting that's really powerful. I call it the pause button protocol. So it's a really simple 3-step process that when you feel the heat rising in your body, when you feel your heart pounding, when you feel yourself getting so frustrated, when you feel like you're on the brink of losing your cool or yelling, you can do these 3 things. Name it. I want you to name what you're feeling or thinking. So I'm having a thought that my child is disrespectful, or I'm having frustration right now. And then notice it. Where do you feel it in your body? Your chest, your throat, your stomach? And then neutralize it. I want you to take a breath and think, my child's just having a hard time right now and not trying to give me a hard time. Or this is just an emotion and it's okay to have an emotion. Or I'm thinking the thought that my child's disrespectful right now and that's okay. And neutralize it. That's it. That's all that you have to do. Name it, notice it, neutralize it. It takes 6 seconds. 6 seconds between the parent you were and the parent you want to be. So I want you to try that today. When your child pushes your buttons, pause. Name the thought, notice the feeling, neutralize with compassion, watch what happens. I want you to also think that if this one tool that I've now taught you starts to help, if you have even the awareness of, oh, I could see how that might help, but I don't know, maybe know how to do it in the moment, but I could see how that would help. I want you to imagine not just having support and frameworks and tools like this, but having the help to implement it. Imagine having support while you practice it. Imagine having a community that gets it. It gets why it's hard to do it, but also shows you different ways that they've actually done it. So it feels possible to you. What the data revealed to me from the CMP study was a consistent pattern of transformation. And I broke it into 3 phases as I was looking at it. Phase 1 was what I'd call awareness. This was happening in the first 3 weeks. Parents began recognizing their patterns and their triggers, and thought awareness increased dramatically as they began to learn how to pause before reacting. And this was done by not just weekly lessons, but also the support calls and the 15-minute tool that I call Daily Peace that I have you do every single day. Together, all of these things helped make it possible to actually not just know I should pause, but actually start to pause. Then what I noticed is phase 2 was more about implementation. And this happened typically between weeks 4 and 6. So at this point, the new tools were being put in practice, the new awarenesses and frameworks and perspectives about things were becoming more familiar, and able to make it more into real life. So the confidence was growing and parents were seeing more and more results and children were beginning to respond differently. So during these weeks 4 to 6, I started getting a lot of responses about how specific events that they typically responded one way, they were able to respond a different way, and how sometimes their kids would respond a different way, and how surprised they were and how excited they were about it, how awesome this was. And then phase 3 was what I call integration. And this was typically weeks 7 and 8, I started seeing deeper integration. I mean, integration was happening the entire time, but this is when people started reporting that these patterns that felt so foreign or new, or they knew it but couldn't really do it at the beginning, became more natural. They felt like connection was deepening, trust was deepening, their confidence and capacity to implement was deepening. And they started reporting feeling like completely different in how they were seeing things, which is so fun. So it was kind of these 3 phases of transformation I started to see, and the data really helped me see that. Okay, so ready for the lightning round? I'm going to summarize everything we've been talking about. Here is what happened in 8 weeks for parents going through the pivot. 78% went from daily yelling to weekly yelling or less. 100% reported seeing meaningful improvements. So that's every single parent that did the work saw meaningful improvements. 207% increased in knowing what to do. They felt more confident in knowing how to respond without the bribes or the rewards or the consequences or the yelling or the ultimatums or the timeouts, all those old tools. They were able to start to see, oh, this is how I would respond in this tricky situation. So 207% increase in knowing what to do. 71% reported better cooperation, meaning their kids were listening better. 65% reported having more physical affection from their children, which is awesome. Hugs are back, they would say. And 43% heard some version of best day ever from their kids' mouths, which was so fun. We didn't even ask about that. We just noticed this trend as we were looking at all the different comments that people had typed in, that there was this consistency with kids saying, like, Mom, that was the best day ever, or that was a really good day, some variation of that. And 232% reported a boost in thought awareness, which blows my mind. This is so good because without thought awareness, nothing else happens. So once I start thinking differently, then I can start feeling differently, acting differently, creating different results. Everything ripples out from awareness. So 8 weeks, 8 lessons, I would say 8,000 possibilities. That's transformation by the numbers. So fun to see the data. I believe this is an important comprehensive data study of a parenting transformation that comes from a program of this kind. I believe this is a very important comprehensive data study of a program that creates parenting transformation. And so I'm so glad we did it. It was a little scary to commit to a whole year of doing a study and all of the time and effort and investment that went into that. But I'm so glad we did, because I knew when I revised my CMP teachings at the end of 2023, when I revised how I taught the principles and the frameworks of Connect Method parenting, that I wanted to create a program that could show proven, measurable results. And so when I got ready to launch the pivot in 2024, I decided to devote a whole year to just studying people going through the program. Anybody who would let us, who was willing, I was so grateful to have them come in and let us track them and see what was happening. I'm a science and data girl. I love nursing for that reason. That's why I went into nursing. I love understanding how the brain works and how the body works and how to make changes that really work. And when I hit my parenting crisis, and I knew I didn't want to keep yelling and threatening, I knew that wasn't working. It didn't feel good. I didn't like giving consequences. I didn't like feeling like I was this behavior, master trying to teach them what to do and not to do. And I wanted to go a different way, but I wanted proof and data that leading with connection and dropping consequences was actually going to work and not create entitled, lazy children who couldn't create an amazing life for themselves. I wanted to be able to marry compassion and patience and kindness and all of that with firmness and with structure. And I didn't know exactly how to do it. But I did know that if I could go find the science and the data that would support a structure like this, that then I could have confidence to move forward. And so when I started researching the developmental psychologists and the attachment theorists and the neuroscientists, I wanted to make sure that I found evidence that this would work. So to me, the data really matters. And in this CMP study, the data matters because it proves that parenting patterns can be changed. It shows that transformation can happen quickly in even just a short period of time of 8 weeks or less. And then, of course, there's so much more transformation that can continue to happen, but we can make a really good shift in 8 weeks. And it demonstrates that every parent can succeed if they come in and do the program, because that's what we found, which blew my mind, 100% success rate with those that actually did the program. So what I mean by that is if a parent came in and actually engaged in the program and did it for the 8 weeks and did the assignments, that we asked them to do, the 15-minute work every day and the application in their parenting, every single one of them reported having a significant shift in some part of their parenting. So this study validates that conscious parenting creates real change in the parent, in the child, in their emotional capacity, in the way we behave and act in the world, which is so exciting. That's what I was looking for. That's what we got. I'm still pinching myself that it happened. So what's required for these results to happen for you? You might be asking, well, these are great that you had all these parents come through and they had this shift. But what I want to tell you is that after looking at our participants and the ones that got even the highest level of success, here's what I saw that they all had in common. One, they had a commitment to change, meaning they were more committed to who they were becoming than their old patterns. And sometimes they were stumbling all over themselves, not knowing how to get rid of the old patterns. But what was consistent was they kept showing up and saying, okay, I'm doing the old thing again, but I really want to do this. And they were focused on changing and committed to who they wanted to become. Two, they were willing to feel. They were willing to feel uncomfortable as they broke these old patterns. They were willing to feel any emotion. They were willing to really self-confront. Three, daily practice. The most successful parents who went through the program implemented the daily tools, even when it felt awkward, even when they were confused. They did the work. They showed up and did the work. Number four, self-compassion, meaning the most successful parents gave themselves so much grace and space and love during this really messy middle transition period when they were messing up, wanting to do better, not able to do better, yelling again, taking a back slide. They really learned to be kind to themselves. Five, they trusted the process. So they followed the program, even when their brains wanted to not do it, they wanted to revert. They kept trusting that, okay, each of these lessons is building on the next lesson. Here's the assignment that Andy's asked me to do. Here's the work. Here's my question. I'm following the process. I'm following the framework. So those are the common through lines that I found with our most successful parents who came through the program. Now, let's talk about the cost of the pivot just really quickly, because this comes up a lot and I want to make sure I address it, because it's just a place that I wish I didn't even have to talk about. I wish I could just give this to everyone for free. But when I'm recording this, the pivot is currently $200. And I know that's a lot of money. That's real money for real families. I wish I could wave a magic wand and give it to every parent for free, because I would do that. But the level of transformation we create inside this 8 weeks requires intensive support, expert help, a custom app that I had built to make sure everything is just curated perfectly for what you need and nothing more, nothing distracting. The lessons are very specifically curated as well to create a very specific outcome, proven systems, which is why I have to charge what I do. And I was talking about this with one of my brilliant friends who put this all into perspective when I was telling her how I wish I could just give this away for free, but I can't, because that would prevent me from doing it, because then I wouldn't have the support and the money to keep everything going. And she said, Andy, parents spend $300 on one birthday party that lasts 2 hours, or $500 on a sports that might last a season. So it's not crazy to charge $200 for the pivot. And I was like, oh, are you sure? She's like, yes, the pivot transforms their parenting life forever. And she was reassuring me of this. We were looking over the numbers. And I said, but it is kind of expensive. And she's like, well, that is a lot. I mean, $200 is not just nothing. It's a good amount of money. But she said, you know what's expensive? A struggling relationship with your teenager who won't talk to you. That feels very expensive emotionally and relationally. Or a college kid who doesn't call home, or an adult child who keeps their distance because they don't feel that connected to you. And she said, that's the price of not investing in changing your parenting. So get over yourself. It's okay. It's worth the investment. And I was so grateful for that perspective, because I do feel so driven to share this that I often forget about that kind of stuff, or I don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. So it was helpful. And I don't know if that's helpful for you. And I'm not, trying to sell anybody on anything, but I am trying to lay out the whole study for you and all the details of the pivot and what it takes to be a part of it and what you can create from it and all of that. And so I wanted to share one other thing that was shared with me that it was really powerful when I was trying to wrap my brain around how to get the pivot out to everybody. And I was like, I just want to give it to everyone for free. And someone said, no, listen to me. If your child's 5, you have 13 years left at home. That's 4,745 days. 200 divided by 4,745 days equals 4 cents per day. So 4 cents to transform your relationship with your parenting. 4 cents to transform your relationship with your child. So they were laughing at me saying like, that's less than what falls between your couch cushions. That's less than the penny tax on your coffee. That's less than 1 minute of a streaming service. But instead of all of those things, 4 cents a day buys a child who trusts you, a teenager who talks to you, an adult child who calls you, a legacy of connection instead of conflict. So it buys you the opportunity to become the parent you've always wanted to be in the shortest period of time I can humanly possibly deliver it to you. And that's super helpful for me because I want everybody who comes in and does the pivot to say that was the best time and money investment that I've ever made. And I will say, if $200 truly stands between you and this transformation, you just need to email me, scholarship@connectmethodparenting.com. We're building a scholarship fund because no parent should stay stuck for financial reasons alone. And if you're listening and you're thinking, I can't afford this and I want to help another parent, you can sponsor another parent to come through this. Just email me at the same email, scholarship@connectmethodparenting.com. And that would be amazing. I would love to make sure that money never keeps anybody stuck. And here's my promise. This program has transformed 100% of participants who showed up and did the work. Not 99%, not most. Everyone who came in and did the pivot, did the work, showed up, not just showed up on week 1 and kind of showed up on week 3, but everybody who did all of the things within the pivot, every single one of those people reported having a transformation. And your family won't be the first exception. And if you're listening to this at midnight, hiding in the bathroom, tears still wet on your face because you swore today would be different, but you yelled again, I get it. I was you. I've been there. If you're Googling, am I damaging my kids at 2 a.m.? And if you heard your own mother's voice coming out of your mouth and you don't like how you sounded, I want to speak to you. I want to say something specifically to you because I need you to hear this. You're not broken. You're not a bad parent. You're a good parent, just with a bad pattern, just a pattern that's not productive, a pattern that we inherited. And patterns can change. Every parent in our study felt like you right now, defeated, ashamed, stuck. 100% of them found their way out. Not because they were special, but because they had a map. And you deserve that map. Your kids deserve that map. And it exists. We've shown it with the data study that it exists. So this data has inspired me to do some more things, to create some specialized tracks for different parenting challenges, to develop advanced programs for graduates. I'm probably going to build a certification program at some point to help other people facilitate it or maybe help inside of our program to support other parents so we can help make sure everybody who comes into the pivot gets the best support possible. I'm going to expand the research to include more child-reported outcomes, which I think would be really fun. I've also been inspired to create a book series, a children's book series reflecting the values and methods of Connect Method Parenting, which I've been wanting to do for a while, but after seeing these numbers, I'm like, yes, it has to happen. So hopefully that will happen in the next year or two, and develop local programs that can be supported by churches or local groups who might want to come together and do the 8-week parenting pivot live in their community, which would be so fun. And our current plan is to roll these new offerings of Connect Method Parenting out slowly over the next few years as we have the time and capacity and financial resources to do so. So stay tuned for that. I'm very excited about where everything's headed. Now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I need this, you're right. If you're thinking, I don't know if I can change, these numbers prove you can. Remember, the parent who joined yelling daily, they now yell once a week or less. The parents who felt disconnected reported that their connection score went from 4.8 to 8.4. The parent who didn't know what to do, they're now scoring 8.6 out of 10. So you're not too far gone. Your family's not broken. Change is not only possible, it's predictable when you have the right support and the right tools. Now, I want to thank every parent who trusted this process, who did the work, who showed up even when it was uncomfortable, who let us track you over your 8-week time period last year. You didn't just transform your own families, you proved that parenting can be different. And to everyone listening, if you would share this episode, share it with every parent you know who's struggling, share it with every parent who thinks they're failing, share it with every parent who wants more for their family, because this isn't just data, this is hope, this is proof. This is the beginning of a parenting revolution. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for caring about your kids enough to seek change. And thank you for being part of this movement, this conscious, connected parenting movement. It means the world to me that this is getting out, that this is becoming more mainstream. So thank you for engaging, however you're engaging, whether you've worked with me or you've just listened to the podcast or you've read my book. Every time we make that decision to try to show up a little bit better, it changes the world for good. Oh, and I almost forgot. If you're wanting to join the pivot, just go to cmp.works/pivot to sign up. And right now, if you sign up, as this is launching live, as this episode is going live, I just finished the No Yell Summer Workshop. So I am offering something really cool where if you're in the continental United States, I'll send you a hard copy of the Pivot in book form. This is a brand new thing. It just came off the presses. I got mine last week. We took all of the lessons from the Pivot, we edited the transcripts and turned them into a book that was readable, really easy to go through. So if you're like me and you like paper and you like seeing things in print, you can now listen to all the lessons as you go through the Pivot in the CMP app and in the private podcast feed, but you can also read through all the lessons in the Pivot book, which to me just solidifies the framework even more in my mind. And then you can come to the live calls to get support. You can share what's going on in the discussion boards and then use the app to do the daily work and to implement all the rest of the stuff. So again, I just got my copy of the Pivot book last week. It's amazing. I love it so much. I think it's a perfect addition to the Pivot. We've been working on that since November, so it's been a long time coming. So it was really fun to finally get it in the mail and see it in person. So I'll be sending those out to people who are joining the Pivot. And you can see on that page, cmp.works/pivot, or if you want to read all about the implementation experience, I'll put that link as well below, the No Yell Summer implementation experience, which includes the Pivot as part of that. But you'll get a copy of the Pivot book. And I think it's just so fun. It's just such a great addition. And you'll always have the Pivot with you. You can take it anywhere you want, even if there's no service. Okay, everyone, thanks for joining me as I shared the results finally from our 2024 CMP study of the Parenting Pivot. This was really a landmark moment for me to do that and to share it with everybody on the episode. So thanks for doing that with me. Until next time, remember, you're not just changing your family when you dive into Connect Method parenting, when you dive into a more connected way of parenting. You're changing the world. You really are, one calm, compassionate, connected interaction at a time, because change ripples outward. All right. We'll talk to you guys next time. Bye. Thanks so much for listening, you all. If you are ready to learn more about Connect Method parenting, if you've been listening to the podcast and you think, ooh, I'd love to be able to implement this in my life and with my parenting more, then check out Pivot. It's my 8-week program where we deep dive into learning and implementing Connect Method parenting so that you can take this information and transform your parenting journey. Head over to connectmethodparenting.com to find out when the next group starts.